Continuando con el tema 7323, veremos ahora cómo se reemplaza una pantalla en una computadora portátil.
Hello everyone, we are here to talk about replacing the screen of our laptop. Now we can focus exactly on our LCD or LED screen here that's inside of this bezel, or we can focus on removing the entire laptop display. So we're going to go through a little bit of both. So to get started, the first thing I want to do is remove this top panel here of my laptop. This is where my power buttons are, as well as where my capacitive touch for my audio. To do that, I'm going to close my laptop lid, turn it upside down, and we have a couple screws to remove. The screws I need to worry about are going to be these three right here. So I'll remove those screws, and then we'll continue. With these three screws removed, I can turn my laptop back over, and I will open it up, and we can take a look at removing that power and audio panel. Now to do this, we got to worry about something. There's a couple of those ZIF, zero insertion force connectors. So let's zoom in and take a look at what we can do with that. Alright, with our zoomed in view, we've got our power control over here, and then we've got our audio control over there. These are both using ZIF connectors, which are a zero insertion force. So very easily and with minimal effort, I'll just take my flathead screwdriver and I'll pull up on that ZIF connector, and I can pull that ribbon cable right out. I can do it again over here for my audio control. This one's almost buried under there, but same thing. I can just pull up lightly on the ZIF connector and pull that cable right out. With the cable pulled out for both of those regarding this top panel, now I can take my flathead screwdriver and I can get in there and I can pop that panel out. With the top panel removed, we can take a look underneath and we can actually see how our laptop display is hooked on to the rest of the system. So we're going to zoom in on this and take a look at some of those screws that we can remove if we wanted to remove the entire display. Here in this top left corner, we can actually see the laptop hinge, and there is one of the Torx screws that I have to remove in order to remove this laptop display. On the other side, if I were to shift the laptop over, we'll see here's the other hinge, and again over here, this is a screw that's holding on this entire laptop display. Now that's not it, there's more. Let me back out and I'll show you. On the back side of my laptop, there's also another screw which is holding on for that laptop display with the hinge. If I slide it over on the other corner, we've got the exact same thing. Another screw that's holding that laptop hinge on. So if you did want to remove the entire laptop display, which includes the laptop top casing and all, we would remove all of those screws, then we would go to lift the display off. Before you can lift the display off, we'll take a closer look at this motherboard one more time and what's connected to it. If I had to remove those four screws holding on those hinges, two on this side and two on the other side, we wouldn't be done. I couldn't just lift it off. What we have over here is the laptop LCD display cable. We would have to physically pull up on this and remove it from the connector on the system board. Also, right above that LCD display cable, I've got multiple black wires. These black wires here go for the wireless antenna that go to the top of my display. Over here on the right side, I've got multiple wires. These three wires are also for wireless antennas. Now, based off of your laptop, you might even have wires for things like microphones, as well as even for a webcam. So keep that in mind. These connectors are things that we'd remove from the wireless cards, like we've done before, and we would use those connectors and uncable them from our little troughs here, which is the plastic frame, in order to be able to pull that entire display off the laptop. Now let's continue onwards talking about the exact screen itself and how we'd remove the LCD screen from my laptop. With this different view of our laptop, here we're going to take a look at removing and replacing the LCD screen itself, not the entire laptop display that we just talked about. To do this, we have these rubber pads here. My laptop has 4 of them. I will at first need to remove the rubber pads, and underneath them are screws that are holding this bezel on top of that screen. So I'll go ahead and do that now. With our zoomed in view, you can see me take my flathead screwdriver and just pop that rubber foot off, and there is that screw underneath. And I'll just zoom out and do this 3 other times. With all 4 screws exposed, now I can remove those screws and get access to the bevel of my laptop. My 4 screws are removed. Now I'm going to use my flathead screwdriver, and I'm going to lightly pry out one of the corners. Now please follow the manual for your laptop specifically. Mine requires a little bit of minimal force here to try to pry out a corner. With that corner out, I can just lightly go around this bezel, and I can just pop it out of the display. At this point at the top, I actually have to use my slider in order to unlock the laptop and remove the display, because those locks are stuck with the laptop locking mechanism. And now that my bezel is off, we have access to the LCD display, where there's lots of screws to take account here, as well as if we look closely, we'll be able to see the connectors that come down to the system board, and also the connectors that go to the inverter that's taking care of our power for our display as well. Now I've shifted the laptop so we can take a look at our display up here, and at first glance you're like, there is a lot of screws to remove to get this LCD display out of this casing. Well, oddly enough, we only have 1 screw to remove here. And then over here, we have 4 screws. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me show you these 4 on the side and how we're going to access them. To access those 4 screws, I can tilt my laptop on the side, and what you actually see here, you'll see these slot covers. And these are, again, little rubber covers that we have here, but this time these are covering the screws. So we can either try to peel them off using a flathead screwdriver on this side, or what we can do is really see those screws is push the covers out from this side over here. You see it lifts the cover up. With that cover lifted up, you then take them off. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the 4 covers, then I'm going to unscrew those 4 screws and take it out the side. With our 4 screws out on the side, we can now remove our last and final screw. With the 5th screw out for my display, what I can do now is I can actually lift up this display. Now if you can't get your finger under it, it's okay to use something like a flat tool. You can just lift up. And now this display is completely detached of any screw. What's holding it in place though at the bottom is what we mentioned before. I've got my connection which goes to my inverter, and I've got my main LCD connection which goes back to the board as well. With all those removed, I'll be able to lift this display right out and put it in a new display. After dropping that new display, I would put those screws back in that we just removed, and I'd have a replaced laptop LCD screen. Make sure you consult your manual for these steps. Every laptop is going to be different, and please make sure you choose the correct specifications for the screen that you're replacing. So take your time, do your research, and become the best IT professional you can by being patient and following the correct steps.
Bien, hemos visto cómo se puede llevar a cabo el proceso de sustitución de una pantalla. Evidentemente, en cada caso habría que ver costos, la posibilidad de la sustitución y la aceptación por parte del cliente en términos de el costo de lo que esto puede implicar. Una alternativa, si está trabajando bien la tarjeta de video de una portátil, pudiera ser el uso de un monitor externo y de esa manera se pudiera resolver de una forma temporal la sustitución de la pantalla por el costo que esto implica. Bien, vamos a proceder a la práctica 7324, que consiste en la investigación sobre pantallas de computadoras portátiles. Vas a llevar a cabo esta investigación para tomar en cuenta precisamente costos y posibilidades en la que puedas hacer esta sustitución de pantallas. Bien, continuamos con el tema de las fuentes de alimentación, lo cual es una parte pues bastante importante y de suma trascendencia para la operación de la computadora, porque esto abarca la fuente de poder y evidentemente la batería, ¿no? Entonces hay varias condiciones en donde vemos precisamente estas cuestiones. Puede darse el caso que la batería ya no conserve la energía, o que la batería se caliente, o que la batería tenga una fuga. Cuando están hinchadas, eso significa que la batería ya no sirve y es necesaria una sustitución de la batería. Dependiendo de la marca y modelo, habría que ver la sustitución. Te debo de comentar que hay mucha variedad de oferta con respecto a las baterías. Mi experiencia es de que las baterías sustitutas, o sea, las baterías que venden a granel o que no son las originales, no duran demasiado. Son entre comillas baratas, más sin embargo, como siempre, sale caro. Entonces aquí mi recomendación sería de que sustituyas la batería por la original. El otro situación son el adaptador de energía, que también existen sustitutos en el mercado y tampoco te recomiendo porque aparentemente pudieran ser el mismo voltaje, pero hay condiciones. A mí ya me ha pasado que al sustituir una fuente de poder por una genérica, marca diferencias y no funciona tan bien. Mi forma de ver de cómo detecta esto la computadora es por alguna diferencia con respecto a la impedancia que tiene la fuente de poder sustituta, porque pues uno pudiera pensar y reflexionar cómo le hace la computadora para detectar que no es el cargador original, y esto porque son los mismos voltajes. Entonces mi única conclusión que he llegado a tener es de que hay diferencias con respecto a la impedancia de salida de la fuente de poder, y eso lo detecta la computadora y lo reporta como tal. Por lo tanto, no te recomiendo que lo hagas. Vamos a ver cómo en este próximo video el reemplazo de los conectores de corriente continua, y estaremos viendo cómo se lleva a cabo este proceso.
Hello everyone. There may be times where your laptop just won't charge its battery, or the laptop won't even power on when you have no battery in it and you have an AC adapter physically plugged into the laptop. Well, what that might be is possibly your DC jack. Your DC is your direct current jack, and for me, that's going to be the jack that's on the back left corner of my laptop, which is all the way over here. So we're going to zoom in and take a look at that jack and see what we can do about replacing it, if possible. Now, the reason we say if possible, some of these jacks are actually soldered onto the motherboard, and if it's soldered onto the motherboard, you're going to need to have it replaced by someone who knows how to properly use a soldering iron, as well as some other tools, possibly even a desoldering pump. Do not attempt this unless you know how to do it very well with lots of practice, so you don't damage your laptop. It may be best just to have this replaced according to the manufacturer. So let's zoom in and take a look at our DC jack on our laptop. Now every laptop's going to be different, but you're going to have to start with making accessible your DC jack. For me, it required a lot of disassembly of my computer. Now this DC jack is not easily removed and replaced. You can tell because it is soldered onto the board. So right here is the DC jack, and I can see how it is soldered onto the system board itself. In order to remove this DC jack, we would actually have to use a desoldering iron and be able to suck that soldering away with a desoldering pump. From there, we'd have to resolder a new DC jack on. Now, this is not something that you'll commonly do on your own unless you know how to properly use a soldering iron and a desoldering tool. Otherwise, this motherboard with that DC jack should be replaced according to the manufacturer of the laptop. We'll take a closer look at this DC jack, and you can see how it is connected to the system board. So here is my zoomed in DC power jack, You can see how it's connected to the system board, and I went through my entire manual made by my manufacturer, and this is not even listed as a replaceable part. So this is connected to the system board, and that would require desoldering as well as soldering on a new DC jack. So at this point, I would have to contact my manufacturer and have either a replaced system board, or I'd have to refer to someone who is an expert at soldering and could do this successfully. So make sure that you take your time regarding replacing your DC jack if it's possible, and please consult your manufacturer's manual for your laptop as you proceed in any direction regarding replacing a DC jack.
Es muy importante, como mencioné al final, revisar el manual con respecto a las especificaciones que esto requiere. Por lo tanto, te recomiendo esto, porque dependiendo de esta situación es el que esa sustitución pudiera llegar a ser exitosa o no. Procedemos ahora con la práctica 7327 sobre la investigación de baterías de las computadoras portátiles, donde descubrirás costos, especificaciones y esto que te mencionaba de la existencia de las baterías genéricas, para que llegues a la conclusión de lo que estuvimos comentando hace un momento. Bien, toca el turno sobre las unidades de almacenamiento interno, las unidades ópticas, que hay que decirlo ya son cada vez menos usuales, menos comunes, debido a que ya muchísima de la posibilidad de acceso a videos, entonces ya se lleva a cabo a través de el propio internet. Entonces descargar archivos, ver videos, pues es cada vez menos usual hacerlo a través de CDs, pero pues de cualquier forma el tema es identificarlos y que conozcamos las funcionalidades. Estas unidades muchas ocasiones vienen como una unidad separada que se pudiera sustituirlo, y también vamos a hablar sobre el reemplazo de discos duros, que en muchas ocasiones, dependiendo del fabricante, hay que decirlo una vez más, va a ser la manera que nos diga el manual de cómo acceder a él. Los discos duros, algunas ocasiones tienen esta forma, entre comillas, fácil de sustituir, y en algunas otras ocasiones viene completamente inmerso en el chasis de la computadora, lo cual va a dificultar un poco el acceso. Entonces habría que ver videos y habría que ver la forma con la que vamos a llegar a ellos. Este es el que te comentaba, que viene como una unidad independiente que se puede retirar y sustituir fácilmente dentro de la computadora. Esto es para la unidad lectora, y aquí nuevamente vemos el disco duro. Vamos a ver ahora la demostración de la sustitución de unidades ópticas. Esto nos puede dar la orientación en el caso de que sea necesario hacer este procedimiento.
Hello everyone, in this video we get to work on an internal storage drive and an optical drive. Right here in the bottom right corner, we're going to start here first. Before we get our hands dirty, let's make sure that we have our battery unplugged, as well as our power adapter cable removed from our laptop. At this point, we're going to zoom in on this internal storage drive access panel here, and we're going to remove and replace a laptop hard drive. So let's get started. So we've got our access panel for our laptop hard drive. You can see that there's one screw here marked with that disc symbol, and another screw up here marked with another disc symbol. So we're going to remove those two screws to gain access to our laptop hard drive. With both screws loosened, we're ready to open up that access panel. I have a little tab here. You can see it's going to lift up, and I can just pick up and pull out that access panel. Below is the hard drive. This is my laptop 2.5-inch hard drive that we have inside of our laptop computer. To access this, you can see that I have one screw over here, which we're going to need to unscrew. And we see this is the SATA connector, so we know what direction this hard drive has to come out. The screw is loosened. In order to remove this from the SATA connector that we see right here, I'm going to have to grab this tab, and I'm going to lift and slide it back. The hard drive is now disconnected from the SATA port on the motherboard of our laptop. I can just pick this hard drive up and it's removed. So here is our platter SATA 2.5-inch hard drive that we'd like to replace. Now you can see that it's inside of this shield here, which is this metal shield, and we have 4 screws holding it in. 1, 2, and the other side 3, 4. What we will do is, off camera, remove this shield off of this platter 2.5-inch serial hard drive. That's a 120 gig hard drive. I'm going to replace it with my 250 gig, twice the size, solid state hard disk drive. With the solid state hard drive installed inside of my metal adapter plate, now I'll need to rest this back in the slot. Then I'll push it sideways until it locks into play. If you have trouble pushing it, don't forget you got this tab here that we can use and pull it and slide it into place. At this point in time, we can put our screw back in right here. Just go ahead and screw it back down. The hard drive is slid into the SATA connector. The screw is back in. Now we'll replace our access panel. The access panel is on, but now we have to screw in both our screws here to hold it into place. Our internal storage drive is now upgraded. At this point in time, we want to zoom out and find that optical drive. My optical drive is on this side of the laptop right here. And in order to access this optical drive, I actually have 1 screw to remove. So let's zoom in, take a look at that screw, and then also the procedure for me to remove my optical drive from this specific laptop. So we're zoomed in. You can see that screw. It's got that optical disc insignia on it for that icon. I'll remove this screw, and that's going to make my optical drive more accessible. For this laptop, not completely accessible, just more accessible. So let's get that screw out of there, and I'll show you the next step for this specific laptop. Now the screw is out. It looks like we'd be good just to pull out an optical drive, but we're not. This laptop does not have a slot for me to easily push the optical drive out. This laptop is a little bit different. So I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to show you how to remove this optical drive from this laptop. So to start, you can see where we removed the screw, which is right here. But now for the optical disk drive, we got to remove it. It doesn't just pull straight out. What I actually have here on this model is a disconnect/eject button. That's different than just putting in a CD or DVD. What I need to do is push relatively firm straight in and release. And my drive disconnects from inside the laptop, and I can pull out the optical drive. If I purchase a new optical drive, I can replace it just by sliding it back in and giving it a firm push. It's locked back in. And now to finish up, I'll put my screw back in to that lock slot for the optical drive. With the screw installed, we can reconnect our laptop back up with our battery and our power adapter, and we're good for our upgraded optical drive and our internal hard drive.
Bien, esto es cada vez menos usual, pero pues igual se puede emplear. Refiriéndome a las unidades ópticas, el disco duro también es una posibilidad de que puedas llevar a cabo este procedimiento. Inclusive espero que hayas estado atento y que hayas observado una unidad de estado sólido. Físicamente son exactamente iguales en cuanto al tamaño, eso se le llama el factor de forma, pero evidentemente internamente son sumamente rápidas. Vamos a llevar a cabo ahora la práctica 7321 que habla sobre la investigación sobre unidades de computadoras portátiles, refiriéndonos a tamaños de almacenamiento para que tengas una idea real de estas dimensiones de lo que los dispositivos modernos ya están usando. Pasamos ahora a ver una demostración del reemplazo de tarjetas inalámbricas. Esto también puede darse el caso porque de esto depende de que una tarjeta, que una computadora con esta tarjeta tenga esas funcionalidades o que vayamos a hacerla por sustitución.
Hello everyone! Here we get to replace a wireless card inside of our laptop computer. To get started, first we want to unplug our power adapter from our laptop. Afterwards, we want to remove the battery from our laptop. To do so, we have to make sure it's unlocked. We have to use our lever and slide that battery out. There we go. The battery is removed. At this time, we want to access our access panel where the wireless card resides. And that's going to be right here. So I'm going to remove that single screw. Now this depends on your laptop. Some wireless cards may be very difficult to get to. Others might be easy, like this. With the screw out, all I need to do is pop up this panel, and we will have access to the wireless card inside. So let's zoom in and take a closer look. With our zoomed in view now, I'm going to pull back on this black cover here, and this just comes right off. But what we can see is I have my wireless card, and I have 3 wires coming into it. These 3 wires are our antenna wires. One's going to be a main, one's going to be an aux, and then there's an MIMO for multiple in, multiple out. Now this is going to be different depending on your wireless card and the laptop that you have. What we need to do next is we're going to remove these wires. Now you need to make sure you consult your manual that came with your laptop, or also you can look up the manual based off of your wireless card model to see what those wires are for. For my laptop, there's numbers here on the wireless card that correspond to the individual numbered wires as well. If you don't have numbers or an organized way to keep track of these, please make sure you take note of where each wire is connected before you replace your card. When you're ready to replace your card, we can just easily pop up each individual wire. You can grab it with your finger or with a safe pair of tweezers and just pull up each wire, and you'll see it come off nicely. And again, keep those wires in order for where they connect or have them labeled. After your antenna wires are disconnected, my card has 2 screws that I need to remove. When I remove these 2 screws, we'll have access to removing this card. With both screws out, you can see how this is at about a 45-degree angle, just like we would see, for example, with installing and upgrading RAM, but this pops up automatically. I can take this wireless card with 2 fingers, and I can pull up and pull out. This wireless card is a mini PCIe. It's not a micro PCIe, which some people call a mini PCIe half height. There's other cards as well, like mini PCI, which are larger, but this is my mini PCIe. So I would take this out and I'd purchase a new card, make sure it's the same form factor, mini PCIe. I'd slide in my new card, again about a 45-degree angle. You can have it upwards. When you're ready, you would push down, and now we'll put our 2 screws back in that we removed previously. With both screws installed, we need to reinstall those antenna wires, and again, correct order is important. My laptop has them labeled. If yours does not, make sure you label them previously to doing a disassembly. I'll take wire 1, which is marked as wire 1, and I will just push it down on the antenna connector on my wireless card. With wire 1 installed, now I'll go ahead and do wire 2 and 3. With the 3 antenna wires installed, we can close up our access panel again. Also, we can put our little cover on there again, so it's covered up with nice solid black. With the access panel back on, we'll screw that panel back on so it doesn't come off. So last step, there's the battery. Slide it in. And then also, we can take our power plug and we can plug the power plug back in. So we've upgraded our wireless card. Now we just make sure you got the correct drivers installed after the computer boots up, and you're good to go.
Bien, aquí hemos visto entonces cómo se pueden sustituir las tarjetas inalámbricas, como vimos el tipo de conector que se mostró aquí es el mini PCI, pero evidentemente pues va a depender de la marca y modelo de tu computadora. Ahora vamos a ver un video sobre la demostración de cómo reemplazar las bocinas en una computadora portátil, evidentemente.
Hello everyone! If you come to that point in time when you feel like you should replace your speakers, ask yourself some questions first. For example, my speakers are right here at the front of my laptop, and if I don't hear any audio coming out of those speakers, I'm going to double check to make sure they're not muted, and also that the volume level just isn't set really low. After I verify that the speakers aren't muted and that volume level is boosted up and still I'm not hearing anything, it'll be time to replace these speakers. Now, I followed my manual and I had to disassemble my laptop very thoroughly in order to be able to get to these speakers. And I'm almost done. According to my manual, I have 3 more screws. 1, 2, 3. I'll remove those 3 screws that include my PCMCIA card slot, as well as my SD card slot and this system board here. After I remove that, we'll come back and continue. With that last set of components removed, my speakers for my laptop are now accessible. Right here what we can see is here's my speakers for my laptop, and they are connected by a connector into my system board. So before I can remove these speakers, I'm going to have to remove that connector. So let me zoom in for you and I'll show you what we're working on here. Alright, so we got our zoomed in view, and here you can see our laptop speakers installed up front, and then we can see the connectors that go to our system board from that laptop speaker. And you can take a quick look at it. There's the laptop speaker. It's got some identification codes on it. We can replace that part if needed. And we see that connector going to the system board. So either we can try to use our fingers to pry up that connector and it should pull vertically straight up, or we can use something like a flathead tool or a flathead screwdriver. I'm going to move that laptop speaker out of the way, and I'm going to take my flathead screwdriver and I'm going to push it and pull up on that connector very nice and with minimal effort so you don't damage anything. And there it comes up. The connector is good. We didn't damage any of the pins, and now our laptop speaker has been removed. If you purchase a new laptop speaker, you would drop it in and install it with minimal effort. Thanks for watching.
Bien, hemos visto cómo se puede sustituir unas bocinas dentro de una computadora portátil. Veremos ahora otro video sobre el reemplazo de la CPU. En caso de que esto se requiera, es un poco complicado que esto ocurra por el precio, más sin embargo, como parte del entrenamiento, este es el procedimiento.
Hello everyone, we are here to replace the CPU, fan, and the heatsink inside of our laptop. We've got the CPU right here underneath our heatsink and our fan. This fan gets covered in dust and debris, so you want to clean out this thing for sure and possibly replace it if that fan starts to go. Also, with this heatsink here, this is going to carry the heat from our CPU and be cooled by that fan. So let's get started. Our laptop is opened up, our battery is disconnected, as well as our power adapter has been removed. So we're going to take a closer look and we're going to zoom in, but we have 6 screws here regarding my CPU and my heatsink. Also, there's a screw up here that's holding this fan in place. So let's zoom in, take a closer look, and start our removal and replacement. This would be an awesome time to consult your manual for your laptop and make sure that you're following the correct steps to actually disassemble your laptop and replace or remove your CPU as well as your heatsink as well as your fan. So we're going to start off first and we're going to unplug our fan. Right here, this is the power adapter for the fan that goes to the laptop. You can use any type of flat-headed tool to try to pull this up. You can also try to use your fingers. Just make sure you consult your manual so you know how to remove it. For me, I use a flat tool and I can pry up our power adapter for that fan. And that's the fan that's going to be utilizing air to keep this heatsink cool, which will then in turn cool that CPU. So my fan is unplugged. Now what we want to do is I want to remove the screw at the top, and the screw at the top is holding that fan into place. So I can go ahead and get my screwdriver in there. Mine requires a Torx screwdriver for this one. So my screwdriver is in, and I'll just be able to take that screw out. The fan screw has been removed. Put that to the side. Then I have 6 screws here, and they are actually numbered. Those numbers are important when we're installing our heatsink and CPU, so it's a nice flush connection to that CPU, holding it in place. So I'm going to remove those screws. I'm just going to follow the numbered order of 1 all the way through 6 for each screw step by step. My 6 screws have all been loosened, so this time I'm going to go ahead and pick up that fan first, and this fan will unsnap out of the case. Now we can take a close look at it. That is dirty and dusty. So that's one of those reasons you want to keep these things clean. Use that can of compressed air like it says in the manual for your laptop. Down below we can see this is my heatsink. I can go ahead, I can pick this up, and again, look at the dust and dirt in there. So we'll make sure this is kept clean as well. That's the importance of the compressed air can. If this heatsink doesn't cool, that CPU is not going to stay cool. You can see there are remnants of thermal paste as well. So we can put some new thermal paste in our laptop and do this right. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to remove our CPU. We can clean this thing up, and also we can install a new CPU in as well. Our CPU is right here, which was under the heatsink. So I've zoomed in. If you look closely, we have this screw here, and this is going to be the locking screw that's going to lock the latch that holds that CPU into place. So in order to get this CPU out, which right now it's not going anywhere, I need to just turn this screw ever so slightly. It's very, very light force on this. Again, minimal effort, just like we saw before in another video. I can just put my flathead screwdriver in there and turn ever so slightly, and you see how it releases from the CPU, how it moves back. And now I can pick up that CPU from the laptop, and there it is. So we can take this CPU out. We can either clean it up and put it back in, or we can replace it with a new one. When you have your new CPU or your cleaned off CPU and you're ready to do your install, we'll take that CPU and we'll drop it into the slot. And once it's dropped into that slot, again, we're not going to push it in. We're going to take that screw at the top, which is that locking screw. And as we turn that locking screw, you can watch that CPU lock into place. There we go. So that CPU is now locked into place. We don't want to put the heatsink in just yet. What we'd like to do is take a little bit of our thermal paste, and you'll follow the manual for your laptop for this, and we'll put a dot of thermal paste right in the middle of that CPU. There we go. Commonly the size of a pea. It's a little messy. You can always clean it off. Now, with it put on correctly, what we can do is take our heatsink, and our heatsink needs to sit exactly on top of that CPU. So let's zoom out and install that heatsink again. As we go to install the heatsink, just got to align it properly. And once that heatsink is set up into place, we can go ahead and take our fan, and we put that CPU fan, which has been cleaned. It's nice and no longer covered in dust. You can put that back in, or if you're replacing the CPU fan, you drop a new CPU fan in, and ours just locks into place. We'll put that power back in for our CPU fan so we don't forget. Just push that little power cable back into the socket on the motherboard. And now we need to screw both the CPU fan and our heatsink back into place. So I'll take my Torx screwdriver, and we can go ahead and do that fan, lock that fan in. With the fan into place, we can then follow the order of our screws, which are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And we'll put them in that order. We've successfully installed our new or upgraded CPU, as well as our heatsink, as well as our CPU fan. Our system should be ready to go for us to put it back together, or to continue replacing and modifying our parts. Keep practicing, take your time, and make sure you consult your laptop manual for your specific instructions for your device. Thanks for watching, and keep working on becoming that IT professional.
Bien, esta parte es menos probable que la llegues a desarrollar, pero hemos visto de cualquier forma cómo se lleva a cabo este proceso, y espero que hayas estado atento a ubicar el serpentín de radiador que es empleado evidentemente para enfriar el microprocesador. En este video próximo vamos a ver la demostración de cómo se reemplaza completamente el motherboard.
Hello everyone, we are here to replace the motherboard inside of our laptop computer. Now if this was a desktop computer, this would seem a whole lot easier. And the reason being is because replacing the motherboard in a laptop, that normally requires you to remove almost every single component within the laptop itself before you can even pull out that motherboard. So before you go through the time of replacing the entire motherboard in your laptop, please order your replacement motherboard and make sure you order one that actually fits the design specs for the model of your laptop. As in, follow the manual of your laptop and make sure that you order the correct laptop motherboard. Now here I am, I've almost removed every single component. I still have some connectors inside that need to come out. For example, connectors that went to the Bluetooth module inside of my laptop that I need to pull out, as well as connectors over here that connect, for example, the hard drive, as well as other components. Up here, this was the microphone. I still need to remove that. After removing these connectors, we'll take a look at any remaining screws that we have to remove from our motherboard. With every single one of my component cables unplugged, and up here in the corner, this is actually from my modem, and that just hooks into the modem connector. Every component is unplugged. Now we can take a look at the remaining screws of my laptop motherboard that I need to remove in order to unpry this motherboard from the remaining plastic frame that's still around it. Now I have 4 screws that are still in here, identified by my manual. 1, 2, 3, and screw number 4 in the bottom left corner. After I remove those 4 screws, we can pry off the plastic casing and remove the motherboard from the frame. My 4 screws have been removed. It's time to remove the system motherboard from our laptop. At this time, all I need to do is pull back on the casing a little bit around where these connectors are. As I'm pulling back on that casing, I can slowly, and again with minimal effort, lift out the motherboard. You see it coming out there as I pull the casing away from the side. On the front left, I have my audio jacks as well as some USB ports. So again, I'm going to pull that casing away to the side as I lift this motherboard out. And take a look at that. These are not common motherboards that are vendor neutral. These motherboards are proprietary in nature. So you have to make sure you order the correct motherboard for your model and for the vendor of your laptop. From there, we can take this motherboard out and replace it with a new motherboard. Thank you for watching. Enjoy becoming an IT professional, and take your time as you get to this point of removing a motherboard from a laptop.
Bien, hemos visto cómo se lleva a cabo la sustitución del modem completo de una motherboard. Ahora vamos a ver la demostración de cómo se sustituyen los marcos de plástico.
Hello everyone, we are here to work with the exterior frame of our laptop. That's our plastic frames. Now the exterior of our laptop is typically comprised of multiple plastic parts. You can see I've got some of these parts removed. What I have here is the removed plastic part for the hard drive, as well as for the memory module, and over here for our wireless LAN card. Up here, that's where the battery was before. Now, these plastic parts are responsible for covering these components within our laptop. Also, this huge casing itself is part of the plastic frame. Now, we have many different plastic parts, and as I mentioned,
Hola, ¿qué tal? Soy Cristian Javier.
So what we can do is take a look at our manual. Then we pull up mine. Straight out of my manual, this is the plastic kits. And this plastic kit, part of the manual, shows me that item 1, that's a cover for my PC card slot, which is on the side of my laptop. Besides that plastic part, we've got the hard drive cover, as mentioned, which goes where I said before. We also have the memory module for RAM, which is item 3. We've got the wireless LAN card plastic kit, which is item 4. And lastly, item 5, which is the Bluetooth module cover. Let's take a look back at my laptop. So here's my laptop again, and these are those card covers that were removed. 1, 2, 3. And then also down here, this is where my Bluetooth card is. And if we take a close look at this plastic frame, you can actually see right here, there's a Bluetooth indicator icon. We can zoom in on that Bluetooth icon, and you can take a closer look at removing this plastic part. So with our zoomed in view here, you can see that Bluetooth icon, and that's our Bluetooth module cover. So I can take my Phillips screwdriver and I can unscrew that screw to remove that plastic cover. With that screw completely loosened, I can take that cover and it just pulls right off. And inside, what we have here is the Bluetooth card. And you see it's just hooked on there on a connector. I can remove that card successfully and safely and disconnect it from the connector. Now let's take a bigger view regarding our plastic frame and take a look at the entirety of the laptop frame itself. If I wish to disassemble the laptop frame itself, we have to go ahead and remove the proper screws. So you need to identify the correct screws that are installed that need to be removed from your manual. After I remove these leftover screws on my frame, we can then flip the laptop over and disassemble the plastic frame from inside the laptop. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now to remove the last screws. At this time, all the remaining screws have been removed from my laptop. I can take my laptop here and I can flip it back over. Now we can take a look at the inside of the laptop. What we're going to have to do next is remove any remaining screws inside of here that are identified by our manual. Also, you can see I have a couple components that are still installed. Items such as the trackpad and the scroll, along here with a battery and even the microphone of my laptop. So I can quickly unconnect anything else that's remaining connected, and then I can talk about screws that need to be removed from this side. Now, it's always important that you disassemble safely and with minimal force. So don't just yank hard on a component. Use the correct tool to help give yourself some leverage and take it out successfully. Now that I have those connections disconnected from inside the laptop, according to my manual, I have two screws that I need to focus on removing. Screw number 1 is up here, and screw number 2 is down there. After moving those two screws, I should be able to pry up this laptop frame. So I'm ready to finish this. I had to take off 2 more hidden screws that I didn't know were on there until I consulted the manual. Again, under some rubber feet, you might find some screws, so make sure you follow your manual to the key. Those were 2 that were missed. And now with those 2 screws off, I can follow my manual. And the instructions are, I need to pull up and pry this plastic frame upwards at a 45-degree angle. And once this is up, all I need to do is lift. And it's off. And there's my plastic frame. And don't just rip it up. Make sure you do it with minimal effort and take your time. You can see here's the back side of my touchpad with those wires and cables. If I wanted to replace that touchpad, you see the screws would have to continue in order to pop that out. Inside here you have my system board, which includes the motherboard. And that is the end of removing our plastic frames. Thank you for watching.
Bien, aquí lo que te recomiendo es que tomes fotografías del paso a paso de cómo vas desarmando las cosas para que no te sobren piezas después. Eso es algo que te pudiera recomendar. Por último, vamos a ver este quiz. Es el 73216 para verificar tu conocimiento hasta este punto. Y en la siguiente sesión estaremos viendo sobre dispositivos para telefonía celular.